All right, welcome to another Zoom call. And we have a number of questions, so let's jump into them. A couple of reminders. All of our patients are now eligible to log into the courses for free. There's no added cost to those. Use your same username. Use your same username and password that you do for the members site. Also, since our last Zoom call, member, we were talking about doing nebulized hydrogen peroxide using Dr. McCullough's formula. Somebody was so gracious to share that document that is on the home page. You can click and download that formula for nebulized hydrogen peroxide. That would be for if you're having any fungal or any issues with your lungs, actually, if you feel like your lungs are congested, you just got a bad cold, to worse knowing you have, a fungal infection or pneumonia. That's a great protocol to use to help with your lungs. Okay. Also, the courses being free, just go to our website, look at the top of the page, you'll see courses, click on that button, and you'll come to this page. I just did a screenshot of this page. And those are the courses that are available for your leisure. Again, use your same username and password that you do for the membership site. All right, let's jump into the questions. I know from the blog that you recommend a reverse osmosis system for filtering drinking water. But until we invest in that, we have a Berkey filter for drinking, cooking, and enemas. Is that okay for now? So I recommend a reverse osmosis system if you don't have a system. So if you have a Berkey, just use the Berkey. There's no reason for you to get a different filter. So a Berkey is a great filter. You don't need to invest in a reverse osmosis. Just if you already have the Berkey, use the Berkey. What are your thoughts on distilled water? Distilled water is fine too. The whole idea is you want to stop consuming water with chlorine and fluoride in it. The worst things for you, especially the fluoride, is just so destructive on your body, so destructive on your neural tissue. So personally, we have well water. We've had it tested. It's really good well water. We don't use a filter at all. So we're not getting chlorine, we're not getting fluoride, so we don't use a filter at all. When we lived in the small city that we're next to, of course, we had city water, we used a reverse osmosis system. My children that are not in their permanent home right now, I have two younger daughters who are married in their 20s. They are not in a permanent home right now. They use a Berkey filter. So they're not getting a reverse osmosis system because that's installed and they have to uninstall it and take it with them if they move. So Berkey is a great unit, so just use that. Reverse osmosis is just more convenient in a permanent situation. With ER positive breast cancer and hormones listed as a cause of my cancer after cheek swab testing, plus on a low histamine diet, how much emphasis, if any, should I put on limiting estrogenic foods? The list is long, but coffee is one of those things on the list. Is a cup of coffee okay? How is it that coffee enemas are so good for us if coffee is estrogenic? Is there a need to balance progesterone when you have ER positive cancer, or does it have to wait for genetic testing results to come back to see if there's a metabolic problem? So coffee can be estrogenic, but it's mild on the low side of that list. The biggest things that you want to look at are plastics, things that are going to be estrogen disruptors in your body, and certainly taking any bioidentical hormone replacement you have to be careful with, even with progesterone, because progesterone, excess progesterone will store in your fat cells and then will aromatize through aromatase and the enzyme that breaks that down into other hormones, and it could aromatase into the 4-hydroxy esterone, which is the bad estrogen. So we don't want to be on progesterone typically if we have an ER or PR or HER2 positive cancer. Any one of those 3 positive, we would stay off of progesterone. Coffee is not, yes, too much coffee is an issue. And we'll look at your genetics when we get those back too. But you can have a cup of coffee. Coffee enemas are good for you because they stimulate your parasympathetics. You're not absorbing a lot of the caffeine that's in that. So your worst estrogen issues, estrogen causing issues would be GMO foods, plastics, especially plastics that have been heated. So think of a hot water bottle in your car that's heated up by the sun. You're getting a release of a lot of xenoestrogens in there. So you have to be careful of those things. Those are things that a person should be careful of, even if you're a male with no cancer. So certainly, even if you don't have cancer, you should still be cognizant of staying away from xenoestrogens. But coffee, a cup of coffee a day is just fine. I don't see any harm in that. Is there any benefit to holding the Rife bulb over the site of the tumor for a time? Yes. So I think there's huge benefit to having the Rife as close to your body as possible and as close to the tumor site as possible. The only caveat to that is if you have brain cancer and you're putting it right over your head in it all night long and it's keeping you awake. You don't want the bulb to keep you awake. But I've had patients with neck cancer, they put the bulb right up there and it's blaring them all night long, and they say, "Nope, doesn't bother me, I sleep just fine." If you're sleeping just fine, have it as close to the cancer as possible. You need, those frequencies will go through you and will dissipate through your body, but just use, some common sense, get it as close to the cancer site as possible. You're going to have the best results. I just got a mini-size infrared heating pad from Therasage, and I've used it overnight a few times. It has a Velcro strap, so I can snug it over my breast tumor, under arm, next to the suspicious lymph node. But doing this blocks the Rife. That's okay. The Rife will go through that just fine. The heating pad also has jade stones in it. I could use Velcro. I can Velcro the pad around me. The only thing you have to be careful with the heating pad, I love the Therasage heating pad. And I know the owner of the company, we sell that heating pad in our store as well. They're just a great company to deal with, a great product. The only thing you have to be careful about it is make sure you don't burn yourself. So that has been an issue with people in the past, especially if you put it over an area that you don't have a lot of great sensation. So just be careful of that. That's my only caveat to any heating pad at all. And this one, you can turn it up high. So make sure you turn the temperature down so you're not going to burn yourself, especially if you fall asleep at night. If so, what's the best one? Just the way you're doing it, combine that. I think that's a great thing to do. My oncologist ran a bone scan, which came back good. Now he wants a DEXA scan. Will this tell anything different? So what he's looking for with a DEXA scan is osteoporosis or any bone loss. Is there anything wrong with doing that? No, except that I'm not in favor of what he would recommend if there is any bone loss, which is a drug, which is a horrible drug. It's not good to help prevent any bone fractures, nor is it good to prevent osteoporosis. So the osteoporosis medication that's out there comes in various forms and it has various labels now. But all it does is make hard, brittle bones. All it does is increase the density of the periosteum, which is the outer part of the bone, and doesn't allow, matter of fact, it prevents calcium and minerals, the mineralization of the endosteum, which is the inner part of the bone that actually gives you strength. So why do they still use it? Actually, there's studies that prove what I just said is true, and they still use it because it is a extremely profitable drug. And it's the only thing they have for bone density. So I wouldn't, you can certainly do a DEXA scan. There's nothing wrong with that. I just would do some research on the drug that they would recommend if there's any issues. A YouTube video popped up this morning about the IVG test. Do you know when that will become available in the store again? Probably never in that form. The IVG test company went under during 2020 during COVID issues. They just weren't, they were a great test that was pushed to alternatively minded practitioners testing for cancer, measuring a score for cancer. It was a great test. We used it a lot. But when COVID hit and people weren't going into their functional doctors anymore, they just their company just ended up folding. They just weren't getting enough orders. Those lab companies, equipment costs are just so astronomical. And it's very expensive to run those labs, especially being a CLIA approved lab, which they were. You have to follow all these guidelines and all these approvals. And you really, if you're going to have a lab, you have to have a CLIA approved lab these days. I wouldn't use a lab that's not, unless I knew more about it. But they just could not, they just could not stay in business, and they folded. So I don't see that lab coming back. When I started using the Rife a few weeks ago, I experienced significant pain in the area where I had mastectomy done. That pain has pretty much subsided. Now the pain is on the other side, but not as severe. I feel it mostly in my chest, neckline, and shoulder, primarily with movement. Any thoughts or recommendations? Yes, I have a blog post on good pain, bad pain. I would consider this to fall into the good pain category. So whenever you are running the Rife, especially when you're new at running the Rife for your cancer, it's not uncommon, though it certainly doesn't happen all the time. It's not uncommon that a person experiences pain at the site of the cancer. That's not a bad thing. That's actually a good thing. You're getting a reaction, an immune reaction to the area. So I think that's a good thing. I would keep doing exactly what you're doing as far as your protocol goes. So that's a good thing. I received my bio results. However, I didn't locate my variant results. I think this person is talking about their genetic results, because I just sent those out to this person last week. And yes, I do apologize. I will resend the file, the full genetic report to everybody. I attached it to on their email. It didn't go through because it's such a big file. So I'll have to send that separately. It's like a 250-page document. So I'll send that out to you separately. I'll get that out this afternoon. Okay, that's all the questions that we had. Anything else from our listeners today? I'm going to ask that all of you pray for Anne and her family. I am doing Anne's Monday Zoom call. Obviously, you're like, where's Anne? I like her better. She's nicer. So I'm doing Anne's Zoom call because 2 weeks ago, her son was diagnosed, her 19-year-old son, and she asked me to tell you all this so that you would be praying for him. He was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia. He is undergoing chemotherapy right now. He was so sick he couldn't get out of bed. She will fill you in on more details when she gets back, but he was just near death at home. There's nothing that he was just so ill. Had to go to the emergency room several times. for those who understand what leukemia is, acute myeloid leukemia, in a young person, tends to be pretty severe, and it can be extremely life-threatening. As we get older, acute myeloid it's just as severe, but more tolerated. He was perfectly healthy, had no issues, and was hit with this. Started having, literally, he just started having symptoms within about 10 days, and he just crashed so severely. We knew there was something going on, went and got a blood test, and his blood was way off. His white blood cell count was low. His platelets were down to next to nothing. We knew it was quite serious. So just be praying for her and him. His name is AJ. And he is a very healthy 19-year-old, very physically fit, muscular kid, very athletic. So this just came out of the blue for him. And it's just another sad testimony to, I think, especially with the leukemias and blood cancers, are almost always related to pesticides and herbicides in our environment and chemicals in our environment. It's just a sad testimony to how the chemistry companies are just destroying our population. And it's so just be keeping them in your prayers. He is actually doing really well with the chemo. He has to be in the hospital for 21 days doing chemo. They weren't even going to let him out. It was just so serious. But he's doing really well. He's responding really well. He's got the Rife in the hospital, running it 24/7. And interesting, the oncologist, Ann, told me yesterday that the oncologist was really open-minded. She was running the Rife on him no matter what, but one of the oncologists came in and asked what it was. And he's like, huh, and he looked it up. And he goes, that's really interesting. I'm really excited about that. That's really interesting. So it's not very often that you get that. So know that we're praying for you guys. Nobody's cancer is any more or less important than anybody else's, but she just wanted to, she asked me to tell everybody so that that she said, I want everybody to know that we're all in this together, and the more prayers, the better. Can we send cards of encouragement or maybe just emails? You can certainly email Ann's email. She's not looking at that right now, but I will copy and text it to her because I told her not to look at her email. So if you have been emailing Ann Q questions and things, continue to do that because I'm responding, and sometimes I put Dr. C on the response. If you did see my response, sometimes I don't. So just know that that's me responding on Ann's email right now. But I will text it to her if you send it to me via Ann's email. So thank you for that. All right, any other questions? All right, thank you for using the membership site. Make sure you keep looking back at it. But if you do want to nerd out, you can jump on any of these courses as well. If you want to learn more about your genetics, the Read Your Genes course is great. If you have any questions about your Rife, the frequency healing course is good. Most of the videos in the frequency healing course are on your member site on the Rife page, but hey, you might be something in there that I put in there that I don't have on the other things. All right, blessing to everybody. Know that I'm praying for you, praying for all of you guys, and Just keep up the good work, stay hopeful and praiseworthy in all things, and know that God's got his hand on you, and there's no surprises in his book whatsoever. So he knows what you're going through. He just wants you to climb up on his lap, and he wants to cuddle you and hug you and kiss you and tell you everything's going to be okay. So if you do get fearful, use fear to drive yourself to him. Use that anxiety to drive yourself to him in his arms. All right. I love you all. I'll see you on Wednesday. Bye-bye.